Welcome to Radio Friends on this Friday, February the 6th. It's a pleasure to have you with us. And, of course, February is Black History Month. We're going to deal with that today. We have JOAN STACK with us from the State Historical Society. Welcome, JOAN.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Now, you're doing some special things for Black History Month at the Historical Society, right?
Yeah, we're doing a number of things, but I'm particularly involved in something we're doing with the art collection, which is a display up in the Ellis Library Colonnade. Now, most of your listeners may know that the State Historical Society is in Ellis Library on the ground floor, but we're doing an exhibit upstairs in the main colonnade, that area where there's lots of chairs and people walk through to get to almost any part of Ellis Library. And there's some cases up there. And so it's a high traffic area, and we're hoping to really promote a group of cartoons that we have in our collection that were done during the 1960s regarding the civil rights movement and the various things that happened and how a Missouri cartoonist reacted to those things.
Are these political cartoons that were in the newspaper?
That's right. They were in the Post-Dispatch, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And what I find very interesting is there were several newspapers in St. Louis at the time. And
there was the Post-Dispatch, the Globe-Democrat.
Yeah, and there were other minor newspapers. Now, the Post-Dispatch is interesting because it was a very progressive paper. So what we're seeing is an artist who did have very progressive pro-civil rights attitudes, and that's reflected in these cartoons. But he was reacting to an environment in St. Louis which was sort of divided, as it is today. So I think it's very relevant to what's happening now in the age of Ferguson to see how a St. Louis cartoonist responded to the civil rights movement during that period.
And you see a lot of similarities from the 60s and what we're seeing today.
I do see some, and I have already shown you the cartoon that I brought in, a reproduction to show you today, which is by Tom Englehart. It's the cartoon he did the day after Martin Luther King was assassinated.
Now, if you'd like to see this, go to KBIA.org and then click on the vodcast of Radio Friends. And you want to, for the people listening on the radio, not watching this, why don't you paint a picture?
Yeah, this is a very dark cartoon, not funny. It represents a field of black with a gun that is smoking, and the smoke forms the words white racism. And below you see the name Martin Luther King, which looks as though it's been shot through with a bullet.
I mean, this really is a very powerful political cartoon.
And it's a reminder, you know, the episodes in France are a reminder that cartoons can be very powerful and they can change hearts and minds and they can be very controversial. And Tom Englehart did not shy away from controversy. And in a way, the most controversial thing perhaps about this cartoon was that the caption underneath read, and I don't have it obviously in the paper, but in the paper it read, "Who among us is not guilty?" So he was implicating everyone in a way in the death of Martin Luther King. Perhaps not directly, perhaps not everyone was a Ku Klux Klan racist, but passive racism, doing nothing, he felt that all of those things contributed to the death of Martin Luther King.
How many cartoons like this do you have that will be on display?
Well, we are displaying about 9 cartoons
Are they all from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch?
They're all from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. They deal with a number of very controversial issues. We have a cartoon dealing with the riots at Ole Miss at the time when James Meredith enrolled in 1962. That's the first of the cartoons in the exhibit. We have cartoons about the busing controversy in 1971. We have cartoons about the Southern strategy that was employed by Barry Goldwater and then later Richard Nixon. So we deal with a lot of kind of controversial issues that were very much on the minds of people during that time. And today we think of Martin Luther King as a very heroic figure, but that was not necessarily how the civil rights leaders were treated during the 1960s. So it was very brave in some ways of Tom Englehart to create cartoons like this. So
he was going out on a limb.
He was.
And the paper was going out on a limb publishing cartoons
That's
like
right.
that.
And Tom Englehart says he did get death threats. He did have to deal with, luckily, not quite what the French cartoonists dealt with, but whenever an artist goes out and portrays things that are controversial, there's some risk involved.
Mm-hmm. But it's important, and this exhibit, I feel, is important because it is something that many of us lived through in the 60s, and again, we're seeing a part of it today.
Yeah.
We're seeing a part of it today. And we would all like to think that we can live in harmony and peace and get along. But unfortunately, that's not always the way human nature works.
That's right. And I think that it's really important for us to think about Missouri as a place where we have all kinds of social and political currents kind of coalescing, and sometimes in a good way and sometimes not in a good way. And I think it's reassuring for me to know that Tom Englehart did exist and did.
Is he still alive?
He is. He's 85 years old. He's retired, and we are actually putting out a book of his cartoons in March. So this will be a little bit of a preview for that. A book of his cartoons from 1962 all the way to 2001. So a real exploration of his career and the political and historical issues he confronted.
So how long did he draw for the Post-Dispatch?
He was working for the Post-Dispatch till 1997, and he continued to fill in actually for the very famous Washington Post cartoonist Herb Block up until 2001. Yeah. So our last cartoon in the book is a September 11th cartoon.
Okay. And we're very fortunate here in Columbia to have John Darko.
That's right.
Who I think John Darko is an excellent editorial cartoonist.
I think he's great.
And many of his work had been published nationwide, too.
That's right. And we have a collection of his work at the State Historical Society as well. We have over 15,000 cartoons, and we are very lucky to have
So people can come down and see this display all through the month of February?
That's right. In Ellis Library, and whenever Ellis Library is open, it's open.
All right. JOAN STACK, thank you so much for coming by.
You're welcome.
Pleasure having you here. Always a pleasure. And especially talking about this during Black History Month.
Thank you.
Monday, Talking Horse Productions and CASA. Our program directed by Travis McMillen. Reynolds Journalism Institute. Audio is Pat Akers from KBIA. Our floor director is Daniel Shapiro. And our assistant producer and guest coordinator, Uncle James Mauser. And if you'd like to see this cartoon we were showing, go to KBIA.org and then watch the vodcast of Radio Friend. Bye-bye.